Welcome to the Faithful Fireside podcast.
All right. Well, welcome to another edition of the Faithful Fireside podcast. Here is an episode that we are calling Life and Work with AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, for what we do, so I guess I should introduce that, right? I don't know did we mention that? We're engineering data scientists.
Software engineers. Yeah.
By trade. Yeah. That's what we do. And my master's was in computer science with an emphasis on software engineering. And then I did my PhD in quantum computing, and then my dissertation was in quantum natural language processing. And so it's all been AI and machine learning influenced.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at work, we've started having to interact with like large language models, small language models, and other generative models. And, we just figured we'd talk a little bit about what that's done for like our workflow and how we have to sort of interact with that on a day-to-day basis. And then how we use it maybe for our personal lives and what we think it's good for or bad for. And, is it the ring? There's also these sorts of things to talk about.
That's that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to think about. And I think the one thing that I can't escape is the image of, Sisyphus with the boulder.
Boulder Man.
Boulder Man. Boulder Man. Boulder Man, roll rock. Like I can't like shake that. There's all these Sisyphean tasks that we have to do on a day-to-day basis, and there's like, the dishes in the laundry. And those are like the worst things of everybody's life, right? And you know what AI can't do?
Those
things,
yeah.
Right? So right now I can't do the dishes, can't do the laundry. Maybe Elon Musk is trying to fix that. I've heard actually that that there is something, one of his companies, I think, right, is looking into a robot.
It's going to be inside of Tesla.
Okay, so Tesla is supposed to be making
the Optimus robot.
Optimus robot,
mm-hmm.
which none of you, including me, will be able to afford. But that might be the thing that gets rich people's laundry folded, right?
Yeah.
So that's what that's the thing I struggle with. So it happens to be fairly good at generating poetry and art and images, and that's because it's easier to work with text and it can identify structures, and so it happens to be relatively good at following a rhythm, iambic pentameter, that sort of a thing. However, and we'll touch on this more, that's probably the kind of thing it shouldn't be good at, the thing it shouldn't be doing, because it doesn't actually make our lives any better to let our right brains wither. But anyway, I think we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think...
just to cover it quickly, I
Sure.
mean, a lot of people... They mention ChatGPT all the time, and I don't think a lot of people realize that finally the media is starting to cover it, but there's other models out there. There's other companies doing this.
Yeah.
There's xAI, which is Elon's, and their main model is Grok. You have Anthropic that uses Claude as their main model. They have other ones too.
Right.
You have Google's Gemini. You have OpenAI's ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
You have Facebook's Llama.
Llama. Yeah.
What are some others?
Mistral, which is a French group's model.
Okay.
So there are also some international
I didn't know that was
ones.
French.
Yeah.
Okay.
DeepSeek, which is China. So there's a lot of them. And they'll have the model, which will be just something that you can run on your computer, but then they'll have like the chatbot piece, right? Which will have like a website, and then that is connected to specific data centers, or your data might be sent to specific places. So like I remember there was a big controversy on DeepSeek when it first came out, and it's like, is DeepSeek stealing all your data and sending it back to China? And I'm like, not if you install the DeepSeek model on your air-gapped machine that has the RAM and graphics processing, the capability to actually run this thing. But if you go to their website, absolutely. Right. So there's like extra layers. and what the model's embedded in and all that kind of stuff
But I
too.
think OpenAI with ChatGPT, one, I don't really use ChatGPT.
I don't recommend it.
I like some other models. I like Anthropic and XAI better. But
Yeah,
they are definitely the Kleenex brand since they were kind of the first big one to hit,
yeah,
grew the user base within hours
right.
to insane numbers.
Yep,
Uh,
yep,
and then for a lot of people who don't, it's not my area of expertise, but being involved in software, you kind of just learn it by trade now.
yeah,
And I don't understand it on a theoretical level like some people might
yeah,
or studied it in school. So
right.
and then I heard a lady from Raytheon give a speech at a augmented reality conference I was at last year, and she did a real good job of explaining, like, at the end of the day, all this is a probability machine on what words come next based off trained data. So it's not creative. It is just using probability on what is coming next.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's right.
at a very simple level, it's way more detailed than that, but from a high level for people who aren't into this world, that's I feel like a good understanding to start.
Yep, that's true. And there was a 2017 paper that was written that was called like "Attention is All You Need." Super famous paper in the academic world now, which you guys don't need to read. But it's the success of the large language models and these chat machines that we are experiencing and kind of interacting with and having to live with now is based on that transformer architecture, which is an advancement of neural networks that allows it to focus on specific keywords and also operate in parallel instead of serially. And so it just kind of takes this idea of being able to generate or continue a pattern of to kind of match what it's read and been trained on. Like it will see poetry and see poetic images that are often used or words that are often used to create an image, and
Hmm.
then that will kind of give it this idea that hey, in the setting with the prompt and everything that you're telling me that you want to do, the most likely next words look like this, right? And that's effectively what's happening at a really high level. If you want to see like visualizations and stuff of how this works, there's like what is it? Was it three blue, one brown? I think is the name of the YouTube channel. Um, that channel does a wonderful job actually of visualizing how these things work. And so I'd highly recommend it if you actually want to get down to that degree of technical detail with pictures and images. You should follow that channel and get those specific questions answered there because we're talking a little bit more about how it impacts life and work than this being that degree of scientific
Yeah.
today. Yeah. So until I can do my laundry, I'm not happy with it. And until it wash my dishes, I'm not happy with it because I think once that happens, once you have something like that and something that's also affordable, available to the masses,
Hmm.
sort of a thing. When you can do that, I think this is now useful, right? Like we've actually gotten to a point where there's a legitimate task that is just mundane and totally repetitive that it could help us have more time. As long as it's automating poetry, it's not really helpful. Okay.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I guess let's talk a little bit about working with it. How do you use it at work?
So, um, obviously, since we're software engineers, it's all coding based.
Hmm.
If I'm given a new code base that just needs to be maintained or resurrected,
Yep.
I'll use an agent to crawl through that and just quickly give me the high level of what tech stack this is using, what's here, kind of the general layout. So whenever I do start investigating components or redesigning something, I kind of know just generally where things are at.
Yeah.
It's really good at that. And then if I needed to create a function or a method to do something simple, or even like creating data in a database or creating a database table, those kind of things, I know since I have 10 years into my career here, I know how to do that by hand, but it's a little time consuming.
Yeah.
And since the the area that we're in, we're using a bunch of different coding languages, tech stacks. So those all have different syntaxes,
Yeah.
and it can be a time sink to go look up the correct syntax for this tech stack and this language to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
But it's just quicker to get go to AI and say, hey, build this out for me. Here are the requirements. Go
Right.
and build something off a component at a time, and not just say, hey, do everything for me.
Right.
I still have the human in the loop kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is a cool opportunity too, because one thing, one thing I realized at the dawn of this is I've never been like the best computer programmer. I only started computer programming because I needed to provide for my wife and kids, and when I am a linguophile. So I was like, I will talk languages with computer,
Hmm.
and so that's why I started doing first computer engineering because I could get a scholarship for it, and then switching to computer science because I could get my master's faster by doing that and get into the workplace. Like I just wanted to do languages with the thing. That's all I've ever really liked. And so when at the advent of these large language models which accept these prompts, and you have this new discipline that I've actually published writing on for prompt engineering is, and even now that's grown into context engineering and trying to just give the model the framing that it needs so it can go and do what you're asking it to do with a high degree of success, right? As soon as that happened, I'm like, hey, I'm actually really uh, skilled or relatively skilled with writing and using English and understanding at a technical level how English works. And I can now actually weaponize that to generate software code that compiles and meets requirements because I can be very, very um, logistic or very logical and have really sound writing to describe what needs to happen. And then, 9 times out of 10, if you're really good at that, the chatbot will say, I took that idea and I turned it into the Python programming language and I use these libraries. And if you go run this ought to work. And then 9 times out of 10, it does.
Hmm.
And so it's a game changer from that perspective because I actually now can, instead of writing code in what we would call like a high level language, so that you don't have to, you don't have to get down into like the machine code or the assembler code. I can actually write code in like a high level language, which is I'm going to use my natural language to tell you what this program needs to do. And then that generates high level code. And if you have it generate the right high level code, it will efficiently use the
Hmm.
low level code in libraries at C and assembler code and things like that that it needs to use so that it still is actually fairly optimized. And I just told you what I want. And so I was always able to function better at the architecture level and I think more at that high level. And so when this happened, I was just like, I can generate like very complex ideas in minutes in software that I can then give to my employer. And
I never thought about it that way with the way you just described it.
yeah,
Like being in software, like you said, there's low level and you move up the pyramid to high level.
hmm,
And I never thought about, yes, I know people say, oh, natural language.
right,
But if you put it on the next tier of that pyramid,
hmm,
it's way higher.
yeah,
I've
that's
never
right,
thought of it in that structure.
yeah,
Makes sense though.
and that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then with these large language models, when you use their application programming interfaces or their API, there are certain fields in there and a structured data packet that you're going to send to it. You can give it a system prompt, and this is what I do a lot at work, and I will just tell it in that system prompt. It's like I'm whispering to you, um, I need you to respond like this, and
Yeah.
then there's a user section in that payload, and that's the actual prompt. That's what I'm going to ask it to do. And so you can actually burn the candle at both ends, or you're playing the game from both sides, right? So that you can control the model. And if you're a subject matter expert, then what'll end up happening is you get a very usable result. Um, and so that's how I use it. And that's kind of what I've written about and how it probably should be done to enhance like software workflows and speed up and anything that produces structured language, it's going to be able to do really quickly. Which is why I also keep leaning back on its use for poetry. Um, especially if you were to try and generate poetry, then act like you were a poet, right? Is an unethical use of the tool.
Yeah.
Though you can use it as a proofreader, if you happen to struggle with, or you can't remember the right way to write a limerick, you can actually give it something that you think is a limerick, and it can tell you, based on all the training that it's had, that structurally it's not, those sorts of things, right? And
Yeah.
then that can be helpful because when you're being creative, or for work or for play or pleasure, the sometimes the worst part is getting that feedback loop. I wrote
Yeah.
something and then I gave it to someone and I'm like, please review this, like I'm trying to be a poet. I'm trying to grow up into be the kind of man that is good with his words, and has that kind of wisdom and that kind of artistry. Because I'd argue it doesn't have to be poetry, but I would argue that boys aren't men until they're artists
Hmm.
in some sense. There's a lot of arts. A lot of them have to do with your hands. Some of them have to do with building, painting, and modifying cars, right? Like there's a lot of ways to be an artist, to create like that. But I think that you have to engage that right brain creativity piece and not just let everything be analytical on the left brain side. I think the domineering left brain force, which keeps us golden handcuffs at our cubicles and stuff like
Yeah.
that, I actually think that's the left brain that basically destroys the world. And so it has to be managed. But anyway, yeah, you can use it to help you write better poetry as your peer reviewer and
Hmm.
close down your cycle time. You can use it to help, same thing, peer reviewing your code and all that kind of stuff. I wrote this. Is this good? And it's like, well, you didn't think about, this. And the reason it knows that is because it's been trained on a lot of other instances of what you're doing.
And speaking of peer reviewing, another good
Yeah,
thing I've used it for is uh, practicing job interviews for specific jobs I've applied for,
yeah,
pasting in the job description,
hmm
and with my resume, it's like, hey, what are likely questions I'm going to get? What are things I need to be ready to explain better? And then even practicing interviewing to it, having it go speech to text into
yeah,
the LLM and giving me feedback on, did I stay on topic? Did I go in order here? What things did I miss or not circle back on? Things like that.
right. Am I uhing and umming and ahing a whole lot and
Hmm.
stuff like that? Yeah. So those are some things that we use it for. We do a lot of integration of software tools into AI and vice versa, so that they kind of have the ability to make something a little bit more intelligent and leverage the low hanging fruit and just trying to improve the software tools. Um, and I guess ultimately, just sort of generally, AI, these generative AI models, which for the purposes of this talk, when I say AI, I'm always meaning that for right now. They're really good at summarizing large blocks of text.
Yeah.
Like if you're at work and they give you like a massive amount of like a really long PDF, or there's a big section in a PDF, and it's like I don't want to read 5 pages. It's killing my soul. You can have it summarize that down into the high points and do the bullet points and have it add references back to where it's pulling from. And
Especially working at a big company that's basically like the government. It's bloated. There's a lot of old paperwork. There's stuff that doesn't need to be read, wasted,
right,
old
it takes too much
processes.
time.
It does help out with that. And then
Hmm
also one thing I like for note taking, um, I've always been like very paranoid of how my notes should be. So I waste more time in like structuring my notes correctly rather than jotting down the information.
Yeah, yeah,
So with this, I can just quickly just jot down my thoughts or notes or things, not have to worry about the formatting. And be like, hey, please format this. This is what this meeting was about.
yep.
Help me, reorganize these notes in a better format.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah, that's actually another good use case for it because you can just say you can actually treat it like your personal assistant in
yeah.
that regard. You can just dictate, some of the greatest authors that we read even today, like, a Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton or someone
Who's
like
that?
that.
I'm
Yeah,
just, if
I'm
it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know.
I'm about to I'm about to Shawn Michaels super kick you out of that chair. Okay, we're about to go forward. We'll move some furniture in here in a second. But I think, like, Chesterton and other really prolific writers would there are times where they would dictate to someone and someone else would write down what they're saying,
Yeah.
and I use it to do that all the time because I find myself with a baby on a hip and I'm like, oh, I have an idea, and I will speak into my phone to
Hmm.
capture those ideas, and they'll be horribly unstructured, and there's going to be coos, goos, and gaws because my baby's screaming into the phone also. But then I can give that to a large language model and just say, clean out all of the kind of noise there and
Right.
structure this into an outline. Now I can go write that,
Yeah.
you know. So there are ways that you can use it to capture ideas in the moment without robbing yourself of your artistry. Um,
And another good one is not having to dive into a 80-page manual on something.
yeah, true.
Like if something breaks in your house and you just look at the manual online, throw
Hmm.
it in and be like, this is what I need to know.
Yeah,
Show me where it's at. Like
absolutely.
I don't need to know all the other stuff in here.
Yeah, skip through all that, pull out just the good stuff, and it's good for idea refinement too, right? So you can actually sit down and say, I have like open up a chat and just say, there's this thing on the cusp of my imagination. It's like out there in the imaginary world of forms, and I see it with my wonder eye.
Yeah.
And I need to be able to pull that in into my conscious space a little bit so I can put flesh on that. And you can start asking questions like, I have this vague thing that is a source of inspiration. I'm feeling inspired. And so you might say, you might help iterate on that idea quickly by typing things down and getting like a feedback. You could say, even just repeat what I'm typing to you and add an extra sentence or
Yeah.
something, right? And then you can then tangle with it. Now, of course, there is an instance of doing that that can be dangerous. Okay, so we're kind of speaking as practiced people who know how these things work, but there's this really famous meme
Mm.
that Kevin's going to put on the screen.
Yeah.
It's very new as of the recording of this, but it's kind of spread. It's been a little viral, at least in our circles, and it's Bilbo Baggins, um, from the Lord of the Rings, and
Fellowship
yep,
beginning.
from the Fellowship. He's got the ring in his hand, and he's like, "Why shouldn't I keep it?" Right? After all, and then and then ChatGPT, instead he's holding his cell phone instead of the ring, and ChatGPT is like, that's a great point, Bilbo. You probably should keep it because you've done all this stuff to earn it, and you've had it for so long, and blah.
Yeah.
That's the devil in the machine. So you do have to be careful that when you use it to ideate or try and help you brainstorm, that you yourself are a morally conscious enough agent, and in the right headspace so that you're not actually poisoning yourself. Right, there are some tragedies that have already occurred because
Right.
people are letting the machine validate.
And
Uh,
that's what's called information bias, right? For the machine or no?
I'm thinking in terms of like people having.
What's that bias called, or is there a term?
I'm not sure of that
Okay.
term. I'm just thinking of people having neuroses and then getting their neurotic and or their sort of mental health
It's the
validated by
something
a machine.
affirmation, right? It's like a
Affirmation,
like the false. Yeah, there's
false
something. I forget the
affirmation. I've never
term.
heard. I don't know if I've heard this
Okay.
term, but that's the idea though. You don't want it to affirm
Right.
something that's immoral or sick, and then all of a sudden your paranoia results in you like killing your mother,
Yeah.
which is a horrible thing that's occurred.
Yeah.
So there's at least there are the stories of that, which is that's a good segue
Are we,
to
yeah, when we before we I mean we're kind of in what AI is not for.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
do we want to talk about like the in between or later on like the culture issues we're having getting older people on board with this?
Yeah, let's talk about that now. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, this is good for what it's good, not good for, and who does and doesn't use it. Let's
Yeah.
talk. Go ahead.
I find it interesting because I'd say late generation X
Yeah,
up is not on board with this. And
yeah.
I kind of understand.
These are all general statements we're making. You may have like a super hacker Gen X
That's
dad
all
or
for it.
something that
Yeah.
is up,
Just from my
but yeah,
experience.
general statements. Yeah,
Uh, it seems like they're not on board with it and they a lot of hesitation and they're thinking that we're completely taking away thought on
Yeah.
any kind of work. And I know a lot of people keep comparing this to past technological advances, but thinking back on what you said about the high level,
Yep.
I guarantee if you found a 1960s assembly level developer, he'd be like, "Why are you coding in C sharp?
Oh yeah.
That's too you're it's
Yeah.
not efficient enough. You need to be doing it down here." But then you have people like, "Hey, I want to code with AI." They're like, "No, that's not efficient enough. You need to be using C sharp." It's kind of like a it's an interesting arguing point that I should probably bring up sometime.
I mean, it's so what we do and what civilization does is stand on the shoulders of the people that came before,
Hmm.
right? Standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm thinking of Einstein and things when I say that. Of course, Einstein was wrong about quantum physics, so you guys can take that to the bank. But it's one of those things where it's like I just we do owe a lot to what comes before. So the assembler programmer is living in the time that was what needed to be done, and you have like magnetic drum memory, and you have tapes, and you have things that are just memory hardware was at a premium,
Hmm.
right? And so part of the issue now is we have such a
Couldn't be
surplus,
wasted. Yeah.
you can't waste it.
Yeah.
Now it's like we have so much of it. Code is written just generally fairly inefficiently because it's like easier to write it that way, and we don't really particularly care.
Right.
So you still have like an awesome, monstrous machine that'll still run like crap because we're just not super
Yeah.
concerned about that in non-real time applications and stuff like that. So you run into those problems. So I guess the point is that the skill to use memory well is eroded,
Yeah.
right? The skill to be able to write Python will be eroded, or R or anything like that, because you will not need to. You will be able to use your natural language and generate code. And so long as you are a skilled architect, you're going to be able to get the right answer. And if you know how to prompt well, you can actually have it, like I said, generate efficient code anyway.
Yeah.
So for those of us who are in the software world, especially, it's going to become a situation where even though, generationally, going all the way back to Socrates, when we started writing stuff down, now nobody can remember stuff. And we started recording things so that on the radio or film, and we're not able to tell stories anymore because we don't have the kind of imagination that lets us tell a story. We've hardened and
Hmm.
crystallized everything so that it's like that's not the right version. And then of course Disney ruined everything and by taking all the Christian stuff out of it and kind of cementing those stories in our consciousness in like a secular way, which that's another episode. But that's kind of what we're at risk at now. Everything you can subsume under these large language models it will wither. There will be those few people that can
Hmm.
do those things,
Yeah.
um, but they will be few. Yeah, that's kind of my prediction. Um, So did you want to rant a little bit also about like taking advantage of old people and folks like that with AI ads and all
Oh
that?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so stuff AI should not be used for.
yeah,
I'm sure everyone is seeing it now. If you can't tell, it's highly annoying, but it's like every commercial almost on the internet now or even on TV is AI generated. And
there's like YouTube
yeah,
ads
even though
with
it's
yeah,
decently made and getting the point across, I'm still just like,
yeah,
I don't know, just something about it is not appeasing. And then uh, on social media, there's a lot of fake videos with the most recent version of Sora, which I think is ChatGPT, OpenAI's video creation tool.
yeah, yes,
It's really good, but there's little things that it doesn't do right, and people are posting these videos on social media, and I guarantee you people are falling for it, thinking
yeah,
it's
yeah,
real.
yeah,
Even current
yeah,
events going on in Minnesota, people are taking that footage and upscaling it and saying to add things and posting it to social media, and it's making people believe a certain agenda on both sides.
yeah.
And it's a real big problem, and I don't know what the right answer is.
I yeah, Yeah, I think this also, you're walking into the dead internet theory right now about like most internet traffic is not actually real people. Is kind of effect. If you wanted to summarize that in one sentence, you could
Yeah,
basically say it that way, is that the internet was sort of once this place where people got online and engaged in commerce on eBay and different things like that. And chat groups formed, and people were trying to have some kind of genuine sense of community, even though as artificial as it was.
right.
But now the traffic of not real people and bots has actually exceeded that of the real people. And so you
Yeah.
can kind of imagine it as like this broken down ruin that's haunted by specters and wild animals that are just running around ravaging and eating people.
I mean, I know
It's
it's a problem on all social media platforms that
Yeah,
there's a lot of bots.
a lot of bots,
Yeah,
and those things are out there to hurt you, right? I mean, that's the way you need to think about it, right? It's you know you can't just walk onto the internet and trust what you're seeing,
yeah,
right? Because if you're doing that, you're being damaged. There's things that are happening that you may not even be aware of, right? You should assume on the internet that everything you're reading is fake, right? You shouldn't be making any decisions based on it. Um, this was kind of reminding me of spiritual practices like Saint Ignatius of Loyola, where we're talking about like making decisions, consolation versus desolation. Like consolation being times when you're kind of spiritually high and in the right place, and then desolation is effectively like in depression and when you're down in the dumps and you feel like God's not with you, and you should never make decisions in desolation. But then you can get online, like big life changing decisions to make that clear. But then you can get online and basically be sucked into the doom scroll,
yeah.
right? And then you are kind of the technology is acting on you to kind of create this sense of desolation, and then you just engage in these like very immoral, absolutist, big picture swath arguments about whatever it is that you've been programmed politically or religiously or um, otherwise been kind of led to believe. And there's a lot of that's just harming. It's creating, it's like that misinformation,
Yeah,
disinformation, all that huge discussion. So we have to, we're kind of liminal figures. We're like millennials. We remember what it was like before the internet at
right.
our age. We didn't have smartphones. I didn't have a phone until I was in high school,
Yeah,
right? And then it wasn't a smartphone. I didn't have a smartphone until I was already in college.
right.
So we have this kind of liminal experience. I remember what it was like to play outside. And then we have the generation after us that it's kind of like, you know, you didn't get to play outside, and maybe less and less people had outside because of the suburbanization and people leaving areas where there was more land and, urbanizing. And there's not a lot of wonder in your apartment complex when you have like a balcony and that's your only outside. So it's hard to engage at that like level with reality. I think that's why therapy dogs are a thing now, even in the workplace, where it's like somebody brings a therapy dog to work and everyone's like, I need to go pet the dog. And part of it is like, we don't touch animals anymore.
Hmm.
God made us to work the ground and to, raise animals and take care of things, right? Then what was it I was saying the other day, right? Like I was reading Anglo-Saxon Genesis and Beowulf and different things like that. And at that time, there was really only two things you needed to be good at, and that was fighting and farming,
Oh, yeah.
right? That's it,
Yeah.
And so you had to be good at those things. Um, we that farming piece, I think we just have like this longing. That's why we love animals so much, and maybe disorderly so
Well, I think that's why it's a
nowadays.
trend right now to everyone's like daydreaming of their off-grid compound.
Mm,
Yeah, right.
yeah, and there's a lot of stuff we can get in with Chesterton and Hiller Belloc and stuff like that with the distributists or the localists as well. Like
Yeah,
if I, how can I be free? And what we have with AI has nothing to do with freedom. It has everything to do with what we can generate with text, what we've been describing with what we do at work, and the
Yeah.
integration of AI systems and stuff like that. It's literally about doing more work faster. You will get no freedom. You will just be expected to push more work through the pipe.
Yeah.
So there is no freedom at the desk with your golden handcuffs, right? They may be valuable, but they are still handcuffs, and that's something to kind of think about.
And yeah, I feel like millennials are in the best position for this.
Yeah.
We've been in the workforce.
Yep.
One, we grew up without it, and then we've been in the workforce for a good
Without it.
decade without it.
Yep.
So we know how to do things manually,
Yep.
and we're open. We see the efficiencies here, but we know that it can't be trusted for everything.
Yep.
Then you have the younger generations. Let me do older generation first,
Okay.
which we kind of described earlier. The older generations are, hey, you can't use this at all. This can't be trusted. If you use it, your brain will shrink and you won't be able to do this ever again.
Yep.
And then you have the younger generation who is just coming out of college. And if I was in that generation, I'd probably be lumped in with them
Yeah.
of leaning on this too much.
Yeah.
I know young guys fresh out of college who are using this to respond to every email, text messages, on
Yep.
everything. Like it's honestly scary,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're completely letting it handle their conversations and their thought process,
Yeah.
and that's what's not okay.
And what's interesting, I mean, then that gets philosophically interesting too, because they don't flex those own muscles, but then the argument, one of the arguments for the
Hmm.
immorality of using these kinds of tools is that they frustrate the end of conversation. Mark Barnes from the New Polity group, it's a Catholic group based out of Steubenville, and they discuss a lot of this stuff. It's very interesting, right? About like how societies should be structured and how economics should be done, and what is and isn't moral in those settings. I love what the stuff that they do. Um, one of the arguments that it is immoral to use chatbots is really illustrated by what you just said, right? These people are no longer communicating in the setting and in the context that you just described.
Yeah.
They're letting the machine do all the communicating, and they've kind of inserted between themselves the AI and the other, right? It's in between. There's already an infinite rift between me and the other, right? And a lot of the people who become saints are the ones that are able to navigate that gap between me and the other um, effectively well. There's philosophers that say it's impossible to get all the way across to the other side, like your Emmanuel Levinas and folks like that, which is I can largely agree with. I do think that the bond between people that share the Holy Spirit is more bridgeable because at least in the end we'll be brought into the same life, right? We will be at the same wedding feast together in eternal life with St. Bridget's Lake of Beer, and it's going to be a party forever, and so that's good. But people who are inserting AI between themselves and other people and in those conversations, it's just I think that's going to make things worse, and that we have a large opportunity for people to have even more anxiety in dealing with the other than we already do. I mean,
Hmm.
we have people that are afraid to look at other people. At the office, I literally walk around the office with a flask that is filled with water, but I'm trying to get people to laugh because there's this guy who's dressed like G.K. Chesterton, basically at the office, walking around with a flask that he pulls out of his coat to drink water instead of a water bottle. Because hashtag anything but a water bottle. But it's like they don't even look, you know, they don't even notice.
Yeah.
And it's going to be even worse. I mean, people walk around slouched, depressed, don't want to be there. It's just really inhuman, and we're increasing the amount of inhuman. The stuff that we're reading on the internet is inhuman. It's not written by humans. It's not posted by humans. The pictures aren't made by humans.
Yeah, there's some newspaper articles that have been exposed, I think overseas. I'm sure it happens here too, where
Hmm.
they copy and pasted from a LLM chat,
Yeah,
and in the bottom it was like, what do you want to talk about next, or what can we do to improve this, or is this
yeah,
what do you like this? And they kept that in on accident. So
yeah,
it just
yeah,
proves that we're releasing stuff that people never wrote.
Yeah,
Um,
right, right. And again, is it wrong to ideate with the machine like that? No, but if you not necessarily, but if you happen to be paying so little attention to it that it's not sinking in to you at all what you're saying or what you're putting your blessing on, you're culpable. Whatever you generate with that AI tool and you share, you're culpable with for that, right? And that means you need to internalize it before it goes out. Um, that's just an important little caveat, right?
yeah,
You can't claim authorship or ownership of it in a real moral sense unless that you've actually engaged with it, but you're still culpable for it no matter what because your
yeah.
name's on it. And so that's something that we have to think about in our work and in our art for sure. When we engage and live in the world where we have to work with these things, they exist no matter what we do.
Hmm.
They're going to alter the course of human evolution no matter what we do, at this point. And there's a lot of ethical concerns. Obviously, I think Claude, Anthropic just got sued for uh, training on copyrighted data.
Mm,
And that's still being worked out in the courts. It's like,
yeah.
can you use copyrighted data for training? And some judges say yes, but what you can't do is obtain it through piracy, which is how you got it, right? So they're kind of like pirating copyrighted stuff to put into their models. And so we hadn't mentioned that yet, but there's major ethical concerns that's going to impact us at
Have
work.
you heard about the guy who downloaded thousands of government documents off of a website with Grok?
No,
Uh,
I have not.
It was tied to some recent government fraud, but I heard it on a podcast. The guy used Grok, I think, to write a program to say, hey, I'm looking for documents that pertain to this subject. Here's the government's URL. See if there's any hidden files that are public, but you just have to know the right URL to access it.
Hmm.
So Grok wrote a script that did that, and he let it run all day, 24 hours, and he came back home the next day and he had 5,000 plus documents of government documents that were supposed to be hidden,
Yeah,
but Grok was able to like figure out a lot of the paths and subject matter of like what it
yeah,
was looking for,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he got 5,000 plus documents that were not supposed to be public.
Did you submit that for like a bug hunt or something like that? I feel like that guy should. I feel like that guy
I
just
don't even think the guy
exposed a
was a
huge
developer. I
vulnerability.
don't think, which
That,
is crazy.
so that's another way to look at this too. Which you kind of touched on, but I'm going to use a different term for it. This is an opportunity for the democratization of software.
You said it in a speech or a lecture you did,
Did I?
and that no, you said I liked what you said. You said this is the, I mean, it's probably not original to you, but I think everybody's saying it. Like this is the creative revolution
Yeah,
where it's giving access, like you said, access to everyone to do this.
yeah,
If you can
yeah.
formulate what you want
Right,
in a good design
right.
with your language.
Yep. And so that's right. Yes, I did say that. And so that's one of those things where you have to like that doesn't solve a lot of the conundrums that we've talked about. It doesn't solve, like what it's good and not good for, because you really have to be experienced and a subject matter
Hmm.
expert in what you're doing to use it ethically as a like kind of a productivity enabler. If you use it to be a fake, then you have a immoral use of it. If you
I
use
think
it,
it's with everything. Like it's the
yeah,
intent that matters, right?
yeah, it's a
So,
tool, and really all that it's really a super fancy search engine
hmm.
in a lot of ways, especially these ones that have like retrieval augmented generation enablement, like perplexity.ai, for example, is just a very good search engine interface.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. It generates things based on probabilities and stuff like we've talked about, like with these transformer based architectures. But honestly, it's just like taking the old way that we used to plow through tons and tons and tons of Google searches, and it's just doing all that for you.
Hmm.
Right. Well, that's good, and just at that level. But then because it is a tool, what we do with it, yeah, for sure, afterwards becomes like the moral question. And then there's also the moral question of like with the vast amount of electrical resources that these things take,
Yeah.
it takes
Very
like
true.
to train one of these models and create it, it takes like all the electric power you need to power Toronto for a week or something.
I know there's a lot of companies starting to spin up that are trying to harvest solar energy in space, pump it down. Some companies are saying that they can make data centers in space. It'll be interesting. What comes of that, if that helps at all, or if that's
Yeah.
not actually useful.
And there's the idea of building data centers. Is, at some point we're going to talk about architecture too, because the data centers I think are gross, like artistically. It's typically just this big giant monolithic warehouse building, and it's kind of a monument to function. So as soon as it's like empty and like no longer used at some point in time in the future, it'll be like this giant scar on the earth,
Sure.
and unlike ruins of like old abbeys or something like that, or a monastery.
Yeah, you could definitely do a whole episode over
We could
that.
do a whole
That'd be
episode on
good.
that. You can still go to those places. People still flock to those places to pray, right? Whereas, the empty mall, I mean, it's like a haunt for demons,
Hmm.
basically. It's like no one wants to go to an empty mall. So we'll have to talk about that. I saw there's excellent articles. That idea is not original to me. There's articles about that on Substack. When I was doing my master's, one of my teachers mentioned that idea to me for the first time back in no, it was my undergrad. So back in like 2013, one of my teachers was working on that idea. So that's not original to me, but that's something we should talk about,
Yeah.
at some point. Um, so I think,
Clear takeaway. I
yeah,
think
I think if we kind of go down takeaways, it's
learn to use it, learn to leverage it, but be careful on intent.
yeah, intent really matters. This is one of those things where the devil is in the house already, right? So ignoring it, acting like it's not there, not getting smart on it, you will find yourself abused by it, I think. If you're not aware of what these things can do and are doing, and that robot puppy ad is totally fake and made by AI, and all those different grandmas are not the same person, and like if you're not paying attention, you will have machine generated content whispered into your ear for money. Like people are going to make money doing this, and you should not leave yourself vulnerable to that. And that in educating yourself on how to use it, you might seize the opportunity to use it in ethical ways to kind of improve your own
Yeah.
capabilities. You can use it to learn. If you use it with the intent, you approach it with the intent to learn. Um, you definitely don't want to. You can't afford to act like it's not there, I guess
Yeah.
is what I would really say. You're not doing yourself a service to outright like pretend like it's not happening. This is certainly like a revolutionary moment in industry. That's why Pope Leo the 14th is Pope Leo the 14th, right? Recognizing AI as a revolutionary moment, where Pope Leo the 13th recognized the industrialization at the time. That's
Mm,
why he chose that name.
I didn't know that.
Yes,
That's
so
cool.
yeah, he's very aware Pope actually. Big fan so far, but it's one of those things that um, we are in that moment, and I would hate for you to get washed over and crushed by it. Right? It's a tidal wave.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be my takeaway.
Cool.
Yeah. So we'll talk about this more. We will have
As
more
it
technical.
evolves, it's a part
Yeah.
of our life, so we'll have future opinions.
Yep. As it continues to evolve and we encounter things, don't forget to put that Bilbo Baggins meme up there,
Yeah,
because that's an
it's
important
good.
thing. We have to talk about the ring. We don't really have time to do it right now, but um, we will. We will have time.
Yeah, we want to hear from people. We want to know if you're using it, if you're against using it, or kind of like if you're in the middle ground, kind of like us. Let us know. Email faithfulfireside@gmail.com. That's it.
I think that's
Thanks for
it.
joining.
Yep. We'll see you guys next time.